Cursor was one of the fastest growing companies in history. From its origins in a college dorm room, it grew to hundreds of millions of dollars in annual revenue in just a few years. Originally the industry leader in AI coding, they looked nearly unstoppable. But now, the situation is getting desperate. From a failed pivot to a last-ditch merger announcement, it seems like it's only a matter of time until Cursor is crushed by the competition. But how did the undisputed king of agentic coding lose its crown? And what does this mean for the industry as a whole? Let's get right into it. Cursor was founded in 2022 by 4 MIT students, led by Michael Truell. This was right at the beginning of the AI boom, and everyone was trying to find the best use case for generative AI. But Cursor's team knew exactly where to focus: coding. AI models had been trained on millions of code samples from websites like Stack Overflow and Reddit, and Truell thought that ChatGPT might make a great software engineer. So, Cursor's team forked the popular software development platform VS Code and combined it with the most powerful AIs on the market. These AI agents could build complex software projects with just a few prompts, and unlike humans, never needed a break and could work continuously. In theory, programmers only needed to supervise and refine the output. Here's an example from CEO Michael Truell.
So for instance, we have played around with the idea of developing browsers entirely end-to-end autonomously using agents with no humans in the loop. And you are here seeing the progression of an agent system, an agent team that worked over the course of an entire week with no humans, generated many, many PRs, 3 million lines of code, and it generated a mostly functional prototype browser.
With one subscription, developers could access all of the top AI models for their programming projects. Engineers loved it. Instead of paying for Claude, ChatGPT, and Gemini separately, all they had to do was subscribe to Cursor to use them all. And soon, the company exploded. Just 1 year after launch, Cursor had reached $100 million in annual recurring revenue. The craziest part? They had just 12 employees. Cursor saw major success first with individual developers and early AI adopters, but quickly spread. Soon, companies like Stripe, DoorDash, and Nvidia signed enterprise contracts to offer Cursor's services to their employees. Cursor's rapid growth was not only great for the founders, but also for the greater AI ecosystem. Cursor's focus on AI-assisted coding was one of the first practical use cases for generative AI, and this sent a signal to venture capitalists that this technology was economically important. Before Cursor, many people were impressed by generative AI, but didn't know how to use it beyond spell-checking emails and summarizing documents. Now, people saw the potential for AI to revolutionize entire industries. But there's another side to this story. Foundational AI companies like Anthropic and OpenAI noticed Cursor's explosive growth and wanted to cut out the middleman. After all, why would they let Cursor charge customers to use their AI? These companies began rapidly investing in their own AI coding agents, and pretty soon, they began signing enterprise contracts. By succeeding so rapidly, Cursor essentially signed its own death warrant. But they weren't about to go down without a fight. Before we go any further, I'd like to know, do you use Cursor? What do you think of their product and business model? I'm not a software engineer, so I can't speak on the company's product quality, but I am skeptical that their business model will be successful long term. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. Arguably, Cursor's biggest competition comes from Anthropic, with their Claude Code AI. Claude Code and its associated AI models consistently rank near the top of the AI coding benchmarks, dominating others like ChatGPT and Gemini. It's also consistently ranked as a favorite by developers globally. Now, think about this. If Claude is dominating the AI coding market, why would developers use any other AI? That completely destroys Cursor's main selling point. Some customers claim that Cursor has a much better user interface, but that's not a sustainable moat. If Anthropic can eliminate Cursor just by sprucing up their interfaces, that's not a competitive advantage. And this doesn't just go for individual developers either. Why would an enterprise company settle for anything less than the best AI coding agent? They would just bypass Cursor and sign a deal with Anthropic directly. Not only would they get access to Claude Code without a middleman, they'd also be able to use Anthropic's other AI services. That seems like an easy choice for enterprise customers. Another major critique of Cursor is that it doesn't truly control its development environment. VS Code is controlled by Microsoft. GitHub Copilot is another AI coding agent built for enterprise customers and also controlled by Microsoft. See the problem? Cursor has built its entire product around infrastructure owned by a company that offers a competing product. That's not to say that Microsoft will kick Cursor off of VS Code, but relying on such a critical piece of infrastructure owned by a competitor is concerning. If Cursor lost access to VS Code, they'd almost surely die. So, Cursor is being squeezed on both fronts. They're being outcompeted by the very foundational AI companies that allowed their success, and its core infrastructure is owned by a competitor. That's terrifying. To stop their reliance on other AI companies, Cursor released their own AI agent called Composer. Now, you might be wondering, where does Composer rank relative to the competition? Well, Cursor claims that the current AI benchmarks are flawed, and chooses to rank their models internally. That sounds a little bit like a student giving themselves an A on a test. Online, reviews have been mixed. One Reddit user said, "Don't use it, unless you really know what you're doing. Without Cursor, my project took 1 week. With Cursor, it still takes 7 days, plus an additional 3 weeks to clean up the mess it introduced. Never apply Cursor AI to existing or complex code." That's a scathing review, and it points out a key problem. If you have to spend just as much time cleaning up the AI's mistakes as it would take yourself to write the code, why bother using Composer? With shrinking differentiation between AI coding agents and a clear winner emerging in the industry, Cursor begins to lose its key advantage. They have no leverage over model providers and are completely at their mercy for token prices and API access. This is the classic wrapper problem. Cursor's early advantage was that it packaged powerful AI models into a workflow developers actually wanted to use. But over time, that packaging just wasn't enough. The hard part isn't building a chat window inside a code editor, it's building the models and managing the development platform. While Microsoft owns VS Code and Anthropic owns Claude, Cursor is stuck in the middle. They're trying to convince customers that their sleek interface is worth staying for. And maybe for some developers, it is. But in the long run, this is not a strong enough competitive advantage. Cursor proved that AI coding was a massive market. The problem is, once they proved it, every giant in tech decided they wanted that market for themselves. The most pessimistic view would argue that Cursor nowadays is essentially a VS Code wrapper with the Claude API attached. But in May 2026, Cursor made a move that no one expected. Of all the foundational AI companies, xAI is the weakest player in AI coding. Grok lags noticeably behind ChatGPT, Gemini, and Claude in the public AI coding benchmarks. In some benchmarks, Grok is not even ranked and falls behind open-source Chinese models. So, Elon decided to make a move. In April 2026, xAI announced that they had signed a deal to potentially acquire Cursor for $60 billion. And if the deal doesn't go through, xAI will pay Cursor $10 billion. That's a massive breakup fee. On the surface, the deal makes sense. xAI has plenty of compute available with their Colossus supercomputer, but is nearly non-existent in the software engineering field. Cursor is deeply ingrained in the programming industry, but lacks any hardware or a solid proprietary model. xAI will likely combine Grok with Cursor's interface and Composer model, making it a much more serious player in the AI coding market. Cursor then gets access to its own all-purpose AI model, and their investors get a massive exit. But there's another motive here. Musk wants to shift the public view of xAI from a niche player to an AI coding powerhouse with the upcoming SpaceX IPO. Now that SpaceX has released its financials, we can see that xAI is an absolute cash incinerator. In the first 3 months of 2026, xAI generated $800 million in revenue and lost a whopping $2.5 billion. But that's not all. In 2025, xAI lost $6.3 billion. That's a level of unprofitability rarely seen in the public markets, and certainly unprecedented at Musk's ambitious $1.75 trillion IPO target. To sell this valuation to the public, Musk needs to convince investors that xAI is going to be a dominant AI powerhouse and take significant market share from OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google. Without that story, investors likely won't be able to stomach such an unprofitable investment. For Cursor, the story is just as desperate. As they're being pressured by Claude and other foundational AI companies, Cursor is looking for ways to pivot and differentiate itself from its wrapper origins. xAI gives Cursor a fighting chance to expand beyond coding and capture more market share in the general AI field. For both xAI and Cursor, this potential merger is a sign of desperation, not prosperity. But Cursor isn't the only AI wrapper struggling to survive. Recently, Google destroyed an entire startup's business model with a single update. Now, that billion-dollar company is getting desperate. So if you want to learn how Perplexity is getting crushed, click the video on screen.